So Sunny, I have a few questions for you, okay? And then after that, we'll have Elvia is requested to have the women introduce themselves, and we'll do that as well. So Sunny, I wanted to ask you, what was the most important thing you learned in starting your small business class? How long ago was that at first?
It was in December of 2006 was when I started started coming to C.E.O. Women and graduated from the class. And then I started my business in January of 2007. And I guess the most important thing I learned in starting a small business is I learned a lot about myself. Like when I started the business, I was really, really shy. And I was really afraid to ask questions in class. And I was what people would call like a pushover. Meaning that if somebody asked me to do something, I have a really, really hard time saying no. Even if I have a really difficult time, even if I can't commit to helping that person. And so in starting a business, the most important lesson that I learned is that the ability to say no, but to say no effectively and still have a relationship with that person, and also how to set my priorities and how to communicate with other people in a way that is honest, but also true to myself. So, I mean, sometimes you just don't really have something positive to say, right? Sometimes you don't have the good news to deliver all the time. And it's okay to tell people bad news. That's what I've learned. It's just a matter of how you say it. And if you say it in a caring way and in an honest way, then people appreciate that. And then you don't have to be afraid about doing that. And so an example of that would be when I first started my business, I had two little kids who lived upstairs in the duplex in front of me, and they always wanted to come over at 3 o'clock for me to make them food after they were so hungry after school. And I couldn't say no to them because they're so cute, and I wanted to make them food, but it became impossible for me to work on my business and stop and make them dinner and things like that. And so I had to tell them no, which was really hard for me, and but I learned to talk with them about it and let them know that, I'm working on this, and it's not that I don't want to make dinner for you, but I really have to get this done, and they understood, and we're still cool with each other years later. So.
Thank you, Sunny. So how would you say you've learned that you've used what you've learned in application in your own business?
Well, one thing I learned from C.E.O. Women classes that was really important was how to do market research and learning how to analyze that data. So when I first started my business, I made a lot of products, and then I expected them to just sell. But that's not the way it worked, or at least I learned that's not the way it worked. And I learned that first you have to conduct a market research. You have to find out who is your target market, what do they want to buy, at what prices are they comfortable at buying, and that was a much better way to then figure out what are you going to make and how much are you going to sell it for than for me to make what I thought people would buy, because it's not so much what I think, it's what people want to buy, right? So
thank you. And what kind of support, I don't know if you're in touch with classmates now, perhaps people would be interested in hearing if that's the case, but what kind of support, if you can think back, have you gotten from other women in the course and in establishing your business?
I would say the biggest support from class came from the staff at C.E.O. Women, because sometimes, at least when I was doing the classes, there were problems that came up that wasn't covered in a classroom. So, like for example, when I first started my business, I got a letter in the mail from a lawyer who threatened to sue me over something, and I panicked and I didn't know what to do, but that wasn't something that covered in class. And so in talking to a C.E.O. Women staff about that person was like, okay, see what we can do, and talk. And it turned out it wasn't a big deal. It was actually like, one of those like letters that wasn't really meant for me, It was just like a scary letter. It didn't really mean anything, but I didn't know, and I just panicked. I thought my business was over and I was going to go bankrupt, and that was it, So, and then the women in the class, after spending 16 weeks with them, we became very, very close, and I'm still keeping in touch with like at least 5 women from my class. We still keep in touch with. We still talk on a regular basis. And about 2 to 3 years after class was over, we formed our own alumni group called C.E.O. Circle, and we invited other alumni to join our group too. It was a group of 10 alumni, and we got together every other week, and we just talked about things that were going right, things that were going wrong in our business, you know, and sometimes we just had dinner with each other and, you know, just to check in and keep each other motivated. And so I still keep in touch with the majority of them.
That's terrific.
Yeah, that's great.
And what advice would you give to women coming into the class now for preparing to start their businesses?
I think my biggest advice would be to go for it and to not let your fear control you. Because starting your business can be very, very scary. Everything is really scary. For me, the biggest part that was scariest was putting together your financial statements and doing your projection, because I can't tell the future. I don't know how much I'm going to sell, you know, and I don't have very much money in the bank. And so it was really hard for me to say that I'm going to put $200 to buy products and I have no idea if they're going to sell or not, you know? And that, like, actually made me really, really depressed. But I would say, you know, go for it even if you're afraid, and don't let what you don't have right now, you know, don't let the fact that you don't have any money right now, or that you don't know that many people right now, or you don't know who's going to be your customer, don't let that stop you from starting your business. And I would say that use that fear and let that motivate you to want things to change. And I know that's really, really easy to say, you know, and trust me, like, I actually tried C.E.O Women 2 times before I actually graduated, because I was really, really afraid. And once you do it once and you do it a few times, you realize that it's really not the end of the world. If you set up a booth and nobody buy from you, you lost a day, but you gained a lot of experience. And then pretty soon you become really, really good at it. But you didn't really lose very much. At least you tried, you know? You didn't die. You didn't break a leg, you know? It wasn't the end of the world, you know? But if you don't do that, and if you don't at least try and get some experience from it, you will never become good at it. So I would just encourage you to just go for it, even if you're afraid, and even if you don't have a lot right now, because it's going to help you. It can only help you.
Sunny, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we're going to have Elvia come up, and she's